Laura Modi. She's the CEO and co-founder of Bobbie, the first mom-led organic baby formula brand in the United States. Born and raised in Ireland, Modi grew up in an entrepreneurial family, built her career with roles at Google and Airbnb. But it wasn't that tech background that made her an entrepreneur. It was her own struggle as a new mom to find a formula she felt was healthy enough to feed her baby. So she created Bobbie, an organic formula startup taking on the decades-long duopoly of Similac and Enfamil. Within 18 months of its 2021 launch, the company topped $100 million in revenue and became the fastest-growing baby formula company since the 1980s. A 2024 CNBC Changemaker, Laura Modi is in the Changemakers and Power Players spotlight. Laura, thanks so much for joining us for this Changemakers and Power Players podcast. I first met you here in DC through mutual friends when I was on my book tour, and then you spoke at our first Changemakers Summit. I think the last time I saw you, you had just given birth like a month earlier to your fourth child.
Oh my God, that brings me the whole way back. You're right, that was 18 months ago.
Yeah. So you've been growing quickly. And I was just at Airbnb and I talked to Brian Chesky. You used to work at Airbnb.
Oh, my original home base.
Your original home base. So you left Airbnb because you had this vision of starting a new kind of formula company. You wanted to take meaningful market share from the formula market. How are things going?
You know, I don't think any quarter is what you expect, especially in the infant formula space. You go in with a level of, actually, there's probably nothing more predictable and repeatable than infant formula, except for the market and how quickly it's changing. So it's been fast growth, it's been fast change. But you remember, back in 2022, America couldn't feed babies. For the first time in decades, this industry saw, not just national change, but global change, and we've been trying to keep up ever since.
So walk us through your origin story. Mm-hmm. I've heard it, but I think you should share it again, because you were working at Airbnb, you had given birth, you were trying to feed your baby, and you had an aha moment, which made you want to get into a business that you knew nothing about.
It's true. That is true. I had my daughter, and it was in that moment where I thought I knew everything about motherhood. I had all of these expectations of how it was going to go, and then I went to feed her, and it didn't go as planned. I viscerally remember that feeling of, wow, I am guilty. I feel disappointed. Why is it that the product hadn't changed? I remember walking into a pharmacy, buying infant formula, and hoping that they would give me a bag that you couldn't see through it, because I felt so embarrassed about the product that I was buying. That emotion, that stigma, it played on me while I was feeding her, to the point of getting to the end of year one and realizing something's got to change. And I can do that.
And so you wanted to change not just the product that people were buying, but also the whole culture around using formula as opposed to breastfeeding.
And yeah, it starts with the product. The product has to be undeniably the best. But it's much more than that. Why is it that a product that we are feeding our baby 7 to 9 times a day, we don't feel good about? Why is it that society tells you there's one way to feed your child, yet the majority can't, and we're not openly talking about it? Why is it that you can proudly wear a brand across your chest for something maybe you sign up for once a year, but infant formula is not something that you're proudly discussing with your friends? So changing the conversation, I think, is the majority of it.
So how did you go from Airbnb to this? Or rather, what did you learn from Airbnb, your experience at Airbnb, that helped you take on this challenge?
Well, I'm not a scientist, so I went into this eyes wide open going, I will need to bring on the team and the group of experts to be able to build a formulation, to navigate the regulations. But what I did take was just an ounce of that courage to disrupt something that was the status quo. And remember, Airbnb was going up against the hospitality industry. It was questioning how people should travel in ways that for decades, for a century, no one had done. So I sort of felt, in many ways, what I had learned at Airbnb was challenge what has been, because just because it's there doesn't mean it can't change.
So you hire scientists, you look closely, it looks like, at the European formula market, and you start formulating your own kind of formula, not to be repetitive there, but Tell me about what it's been like with the product in the market, gaining market share, because you're going up against these giants.
Look, 90% of the market, I remember one of the first stats I read, and it was 90% of the market is owned by two companies. It's a duopoly. And if you pause and think about that for a second, why is it that a product that is the sole nutrition that is fed to a vulnerable audience hasn't changed in decades and two companies own it? It was a challenge. It was a challenge that I felt probably more as a mother deserved to see change. I mean, you look at on shelf, granola bars have changed, bags of chips, sodas, but yet a product as important as infant formula was still the same as what I had 40 years before that. That's wild.
It seems like there was this key moment of truth where you showed how helpful you could be when there was that formula shortage. Yeah. Walk me through that crisis and how you saw that as a huge opportunity to change the way people thought about formula and regulating formula.
Oh, I woke up in that moment. I think we all took for granted that this is a commodity, it's infant formula, it should just be available, it should be accessible. No one ever questioned its resiliency until that moment in February, when we all realized when the president was saying America can't feed babies. You start to unpack it. Why was that? It's because we allowed the market to be concentrated. We allowed two companies to feed America's babies. We allowed for very few domestic manufacturers to be able to produce this product. And then I think there was a little bit of complacency to the importance of it and how we needed to invest in nutritional standards, safety and quality, testing of heavy metals. I mean, you start to go through the checklist of it. There should be nothing more important than building the muscle and resiliency to improve this market.
So recently there was a big New York Times article about how you were participating in a Health and Human Services meeting about formula with some of the big manufacturers of formula. And the article was not so much about you participating, but more about the backlash that drew from some of your customers who didn't like the policies of RFK Jr. around vaccines and the like. What exactly went on there?
So let's unpack that a little bit. Since day one, Bobbie has fought for anything surrounding the fight for our customers and our community, from paid leave to the Black maternal mortality crisis to supporting even during the LA wildfires. So we don't look at it as a factor of who's in the administration as a point of do we fight or not. Yes, it happens to be that the current administration in seat comes with some polarizing perspectives. And when I received the phone call to say you are being invited into a roundtable conversation around the future of your industry, and the rest of the CEOs of the infant formula space, who all happen to be men, will also be in that room, you better believe I took that invite. And I took that invite because if I didn't, my voice and the voice of mothers and the voice of our community or the next generation was going to be missing from that table. Now, not everyone can see, and I think this is where some of the questionable backlash can come from, which is a lot of questions as to why did you enter the room? Why did you have that conversation? And I think during this journey, I've had to continue to sit up straighter, check in on the intention, and the overall intention is to improve the industry regardless of who's in seat.
So what did you do when you got those messages from customers who were frustrated that you decided you wanted to be part of that conversation?
To start, it was a very, very small number in the grand scheme of the overwhelming support to say thank you for doing this. But we listened. And I think during the listening process, it was a wake-up call that just because we are in a position of being able to fight and take the phone call and enter the room doesn't mean that translates immediately to a customer. So we put out a letter and we explained what our intentions are. And by the way, we're going to keep fighting. And these regulators are going to keep regulating what this industry looks like. And regardless of who's in seat, we will be the voice of customers and mothers. And I think the response then, we did get a lot of reactions to say, this is exactly the message that we wanted to hear for why you decided to engage.
So what's the lesson, the takeaway, the advice to other people, maybe advice to women who are navigating similarly complex, prickly situations where they want to do the right thing, and they're also reckoning with a really complicated landscape, especially politically.
This goes for every industry. The political landscape is very charged, and it's polarized especially when you think of something like feeding babies should not be. In fact, there's very, very few things that you would put into the world of being extremely nonpartisan. And unfortunately, you have to walk in with thick skin and the courage to know you're not going to win over everyone. So the advice I would give is check in on your intentions and your integrity and your authenticity. Know that you're fighting for the right thing, and you got to own your courage.
So where did your courage come from? How did you go from Ireland to San Francisco and Airbnb to building this company? Where did that all come from? What inspires you?
Maybe it is a little bit of the Irish background. It's the Irish fight. I grew up as the eldest of 5, and I was part of an entrepreneurial family who watching over the years the ups and downs, navigating the hurdles, but enjoying the wins humbly. There's reward in the fight, there's reward in the hard work. And at the end of the day, you're on this journey once. And I see that. I see every year, every decade that we enter as an opportunity to fundamentally change something.
You said you have to have a thick skin. Did
Yes.
you always have a thick skin, or is that something you've built up over time?
I think I would have said I'd always had it, but my God, it's gotten thicker over the years. It's gotten thicker over the years. And regardless, I still think there's moments where I have to check in on myself. I am still human. And navigating this journey, regardless of sort of the attacks or opinions that can come your way, there's moments where you have to take the internal check-in and remind yourself that while you're being human, that's okay. And then put your thick skin back on.
So how do you do that? What is your internal check-in?
I do this thing called my personal and professional check-in every night. Every night before I go to sleep. It's like a habit that I've built now, from brushing my teeth to just getting ready for bed. And the personal and professional check-in is I rate my day, personally and professionally, on a scale of 1 to 5. And it is a small mental check-in I have with myself to just remind myself that if I am feeling a certain way, it's because personally today was a 2. And here's why. And that's okay. Tomorrow could be a 5. It's a daily habit.
This is fascinating. I want to try doing this. Do you write it down? Do you share it with your husband? How does this work?
No. Sometimes I write it down, but no, I usually just do it as I lie in bed. And it's become sort of the habit that if I start drifting off to sleep and I realize I haven't done it, I find myself jolting awake again and just doing a quick, wow, today was a 4 professionally. Here's the 2 reasons why. Personally, it was also a 4, and here's why. Great day, sum it up, go to sleep, wake up again.
Amazing. So constantly keeping track, which also reminds yourself that one day is not the end of the world.
Exactly. And I think sometimes you have to regulate your feelings and emotions on a wild ride, personally and professionally. I mean, building this company over the last 8 years, I've also had 4 children, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And the good months or the good years come and go as much as the highs or the lows. And the daily moments just allow me to stay focused and grounded.
So 4 kids over the course of this company. How have you changed as a leader in that time?
Maybe this is less about how I've changed and sort of the growth, but I've come to learn that my aperture for learning or curiosity has only grown. You start, and I think starting any company, there's sort of a level of confidence and conviction on the things that you know to believe are true when you go after them. And I think what surprised me over the years is every year that goes by, there's more and more I feel like I don't know. And the hunger and appetite to want to consume more, and the recognition that there's so much out there to take in. And yes, I nurture the tension between the confidence of what I've grown with, but I think the aperture for growth and learning and curiosity has only gotten bigger.
So you become more confident, but you're also more humble, or you become more open to changing and learning? What does that mean?
I think it's the truth of both of them, right? You you become more confident in what you know to be true, but also in the things you don't. I think in the past, I would have been unconfident with what I didn't know. Today, I hold the truth around what I don't know, and that's okay, because I stand straighter saying, I have the ability to learn this. In fact, I even have the permission to enter and do it. And that comes with confidence. So I don't know, if I could go back and do anything, I would do 100 PhDs over and over and over, because there's so much that needs to be consumed and learned. And there's confidence in being able to say that out loud.
And so, in addition to your experience building this company and everything you've done, from the science to the communication, the marketing, and working with families, are there mentors, or do you have a community of people who've helped you figure this out and helped you evolve as a leader?
I could name endless number of incredible leaders, and over the last few years, I actually would point it back to my kids. My eldest daughter, in many ways, the inspiration to start Bobbie. I've sort of grown in many ways where I see her not only as a friend, but an ally. I don't have all the capacity I think maybe I thought I would have as a mother, being able to go through these milestones. And she's growing with me on this journey of building a company. We're there for each other. A little story like on this, I missed a very important event that she had at school. And my God, the guilt and the feeling of I wasn't there for her. I said I would going to be, I broke my promise. And I was apologizing to her that night, and she turned to me and she goes, Mom, that's okay. This is your first time doing this. I'm your eldest, it's okay. And just, I suppose, again, the vulnerability and just learning from my own kids to be able to have the grace in your own growth journey is fabulous.
She had more grace for you than you had for yourself.
She did.
So, so you have your kids and you're learning from them, but 4 kids, crazy job. How do you make this all work? What is your life hack to manage this?
A little bit of compartmentalizing on all of the craziness in life. I'm not going to spiel off the most perfect schedule that says I wake at 5, I exercise, and then I drop all my kids off. That's not true. Every day is different. I kick off my Mondays being able to go, can I squeeze in a workout here or there? Maybe it's just a power walk and I stick on my ankle weights. Maybe I'll squeeze in a few of the calls that I didn't do over the last week here or there. Me and my husband trade off a lot. And then behind the scenes of it all, I mean, there is that partnership sort of agreement that we have, which is we're both building together and we're supporting each other along this journey.
He's also an entrepreneur.
He is also an entrepreneur. And, you know, there's a little bit of equality to that and supporting each other in the craziness and forgiveness of the certain things that fall or we need to pick up because one person needs a little bit of help that week. But it's not perfect. It's not perfect. And I'm more of the mentality of I'm in a decade, to be fair, of investing and building. And that investment means that it's a little messy.
I've heard you keep meetings really short. You're
yes,
super
I love
efficient.
tight meetings. I love tight meetings. I like the clarity of what are we trying to get out of this.
So how short?
15 minutes if it's an inform, 30 minutes if you need to get to a quick alignment. And then I also strongly believe on the other side, if you need deep engagement and conversation, then structure a meeting so that you're not 40 minutes in realizing this should have been blocked for half a day. And also during this half a day, we should have been very clear on what the outcomes are. No one's leaving this room until we're done. So behind the scenes, there's a level of rigor and infrastructure that I hold near and dear.
To make it all work, to make it to as many of those kids' activities as
Yes.
possible. You've also gotten a lot of credit for really being a marketing genius. And you have done some incredibly provocative marketing campaigns to get Bobbie on people's radar, billboards in Times Square, but also to explain what Bobbie stands for. Mm-hmm. Here you are, working mom, you built Bobbie for your daughter, you've used it yourself. What is your marketing message and how have you figured out to stick out amongst all the noise?
Well, first to give credit to my exceptional team. I mean, across the entire company, it's a team run by moms who all get it, so there's representation in there. But how we do it is we don't see this as trying to sell product. And I think that's sort of where it starts. Infant formula is needed. And if, by the way, if you have the best product, they're going to come to you. And if it doesn't work for them, that's okay as well. And we sort of are grounded in that confidence and belief in our product first and foremost. But it's what surrounds the product that really is the marketing win. And I actually think it's more of the education and awareness win, less of the term marketing. We use celebrities to say, don't sell the product, instead fight for paid leave. At the end of the segment or at the end of the ad, why don't you put up a phone number to get people to call their rep so that they can explain why paid leave is needed, why we need to fight for the Black maternal mortality crisis, why childcare costs are through the roof. So we look at the issues that surround what that parent truly cares about, and we say, let's get, I don't know, billboard grabbing attention on the issue that someone wants to fight for versus the product itself.
It seems like increasingly, especially in this administration, we see CEOs trying to stay away from issues, stay away from anything that could be seen as divisive. It's already such a fragmented ecosystem now. Why are you leaning further into the issues as opposed to trying to be neutral?
I don't have time. Like, there's a little bit of mothering in the act of being a CEO in today's time. And going back to like not having the time for things, you have to be efficient. I don't have the tolerance to dance around something anymore. If we're going to build a legacy, we have to do it now. We're looking at things like the infant formula crisis or the fact that the new administration is questioning the nutritional standards. I could sit back and see how it goes, or we could take a stand and say, why don't we lean into this? So whenever there is an opportunity to say we could play a role in furthering this, getting loud about it, acting on it, we don't have time.
You're based here in DC, which is pretty unusual for a startup founder. There is an ecosystem here, but it's relatively small. And I know you used to be in San Francisco. How is your perspective different being based here? And how has that impacted the way you're scaling the company? Or is it?
I think there's a little bit of it. I used to feel that when it came to policy changes or societal or cultural changes, it was very much that happens in DC under a certain political roof, and then companies need to navigate the private sector. And I think maybe being in DC has shown that actually being invited into the room or maybe asking to be in the room is totally possible. And the power of private sector and public sector to work together is far greater than us doing it alone.
So what's this next phase about for you? For you as a leader, as a mom, I think it's notable that when you entered the market, you were really the only startup in the space. Now there's some other players trying to have that Bobbie effect. How do you feel about that competition? Does that impact the way you're leading the company?
From day one, sort of saying breaking up the concentration was important, not because we saw it as a competitive position, but because parents need choice. Mm-hmm. Again, when you are going to choose your infant formula, it shouldn't be, oh, there's 3 different or 4 different formulas on shelf. There should be more options. So I think if we do right, there should be multiple Bobbies. There should be multiple choices. And if we can play a role in raising the bar and incentivizing and encouraging people to come in and be as bold as we were, that's incredible. I also believe the market's big enough.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of people who need formula.
100%. And then there's also internal competition, right? It in many ways forces you to look inside and say, let's not rest on our laurels. I mean, we're not just sort of innovating from the first products that we had on a quarterly basis at this point, but within Bobbie Labs, which is our innovation arm, we're pushing additional clinical studies. We're looking beyond the US. We're saying, what else can we do to push this? And without competition, sometimes that energy just isn't there.
So what's your biggest challenge now as you look at this next phase of your leadership? You've established Bobbie as a true player in this space. You're really redefining the market, but you're still a relatively small player compared to those giants. What's next for you?
The biggest challenge is this is a highly regulated, really pharmaceutical grade product. And while it sits on shelf many ways as a CPG product, you won't be able to go into a store and find any other product that is essentially the alternative to something that the human body makes as the sole nutrition for the youngest audience. So what is deep on my heart is, while we have moved very fast, become the fastest growing infant formula company, now that we've bought domestic manufacturing, we have a beautiful manufacturing facility in the heartland of the country. This is a decade of nurturing that. Nurturing the safety of it, the quality of it, continuing to invest back into it. I wake every day with a smile on my face, knowing that the responsibility and duty that I have in feeding babies is not taken lightly. And that's hard work. So it's honestly, maybe it's not doing much more besides just doing it.
Well, it seems like you're very focused, you're very driven. Do you ever get tired or burnt out? I mean, you're laughing, but how do you avoid burnout when you're so focused? You're dealing with all of these different factors. How do you keep going?
Oh, okay, I have a little confession with you. Yesterday, I was coming back from New York, and I get on the Acela, the Acela from New York to DC. I'm on the phone, I'm doing 101 things. I get on the train, and the conductor comes by, and he looks at me, he scans the ticket, he goes, "Where are you going, ma'am?" I said, "DC." And then he looks at the person beside me, he goes, "And where are you going?" And he said, "Boston." And I had a moment as I sat there watching my train go in the opposite direction, going, okay, we all make mistakes. There's moments where you fumble along the speed and energy of the everyday. And yeah, I think there's moments of being exhausted. There's moments of kind of tripping over yourself and getting it wrong, and sometimes just shipping off to Boston.
I have another confession. So yesterday when I was flying from Los Angeles to DC, I would have gotten on the wrong plane, but they didn't let me get on because you had to show your ticket first. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate this honesty moment.
Yeah, I did not get on the plane to Seattle. I did get on the plane to DC, and luckily that all worked out.
Okay.
But it seems like you're with all of this focus, and yes, we all make mistakes because we're exhausted and we're running on empty. You're very purposeful with your time. I only have 2 kids. I would love to have an ounce of the efficiency that you have with your 4. Any other life hacks that have gotten you through this incredible phase of growth?
I am very strict about my shared calendar for the kids. And that shared calendar is blown up on a screen in our kitchen. And it's a hack where we've sort of built in the habits where the morning kicks off. Everyone sees, from Colin having soccer to Owen having violin to Mary having a play date, to me being able to be at a parent-teacher meeting. And there's a check-in daily, really, on, do we know what the day's going to look like? Is this going to be chaotic? It's a zoo. And by the way, some of these things are not going to happen. So let's be honest with ourselves. But I think the efficiency sort of comes with an everyday moment to truly just check in and be prepared, take a deep breath, maybe listen to some punk music, and just get ready to go.
I really like the end of the day check-in. I'm going to start doing that. And I'm glad you made it to New York. You made it from New York to DC, and I made it from LA to DC, because we both would have ended up in the wrong place. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. CNBC Changemaker from our first Changemakers list.
Thank you for having me.